Welcome, everybody, and thank you for spending part of your evening with us. Here's a little bit about us. We are Jade and Paul Talbot. We're East Bay realtors. We're homeowners. We're parents to two young wild boys. They are ages 7 and 9. Paul, I want to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How long have you been in the business, and what aspect of real estate do you love the most?
So I'm Paul. I've been in the business for 13 years, since we moved to the Bay Area, and a lot of construction in my background. Also, English major, wanted to go to law school, so kind of a lot of that played into my decision to go into real estate. And I love putting together a scenario or a situation that makes a lot of financial sense and a lot of life sense for folks. So, uh, being able, from a first-time home buyer just getting their first place, maybe it needs a little bit of cosmetic love and they're going to have some instant equity. Maybe somebody's looking to upsize or downsize. But if we can just like get that really smooth transition, that it just feels like you're hitting a home run.
And I'm Jade. I joined Paul in real estate in 2020, and I work primarily in property prep and marketing for listings. And just to give you a little context about our perspective and a little history, in the past 10 years, we've had those two kids that I told you about earlier. We have purchased three homes, we've flipped two homes, and helped more than 250 people buy and sell homes here in the Bay Area. So, in a lot of ways, we do live and breathe houses, both personally and professionally. And more importantly, we've seen firsthand how powerful real estate can be, not just as an investment, but as something that really shapes how you live your life, where your kids grow up, how much space you have, how connected you feel to your community. And we've always believed that real estate can be one of the most powerful tools families have to build equity and also create the lifestyle they want. The reason this topic is personal for us is because we've navigated this transition ourselves twice and learned a lot along the way. Each move happened for the same reason many of our clients are starting to think about moving. Our life started to outgrow our house. Our first home was small. It worked perfectly for that stage of life, but it had one bathroom. Once we started thinking about adding to our family, having another baby, the house began to feel tight. The second bathroom situation became essential if we were going to have another baby. So we also wanted more space. We wanted more space. We wanted better schools. We found a house we could improve in San Leandro that was double the size of our Oakland home. It was walkable to yoga, parks, coffee shops. It was the dream. It checked nearly all of our boxes, but it was on a busy street, and we knew at the time it wouldn't be our forever home. So we had our second baby, went through just a little global pandemic, finished renovating the house, and we came to the crossroads again, probably because we finished all of the home renovations on that home and we're kind of serial remodelers. We found our current house, and it was perfect because we wanted room for the kids to grow, space for guests, flexibility in how we live and work. Paul, do you want to add anything
All of,
there?
yeah, and I did want to say, and throughout each of those transitions, there were all interesting financial aspects to it. A home equity line got us the down payment for house number two, departing residence programs, not counting the mortgage against our debt to income ratio. So, like, there's a lot of little financial jujitsu and navigations to get from point A to point B, and hopefully not shed too many dollars along the way.
Absolutely. So there's the financial aspect, and what we've also learned is that these decisions are rarely only financial because they're life decisions. You're thinking about schools, making space for family to visit, prioritizing community, maybe prioritizing the next phase of your life and moving to a different place, downsizing potentially. At the same time, trying to be responsible with your finances. So, along the way, we've seen just about every financial situation you can imagine, different equity positions, different lending strategies, and different timelines. When it comes to mapping out the financial side of these decisions, Paul is usually the person people love talking to. So at the end of the webinar, we'll let you know the best way to schedule a strategy call with Paul. We created this workshop because we kept seeing the same pattern with homeowners in the East Bay. We kept meeting really thoughtful families that were getting stuck between the decision of renovating or moving and not having a clear way to decide the best path forward. One of the hardest parts of making a move is the uncertainty you feel before you make that decision. When it comes to homes, there's so many feelings. There's emotional attachment, there's the fear of making the wrong move, and there are so many options: renovate, add on, wait, move, stay, rent, buy. The list goes on. And when you're trying to make a decision inside all of that noise, it can feel really overwhelming. We have been there and we know what it feels like. One thing we've noticed helping families through this process is that once they make the decision, okay, we are moving, this is it, we're going to do it, the rest of the process becomes that much simpler because that's when we're able to step in and help you and really hold your hand through the next steps. When people start thinking about a move, they often imagine the hardest part will be the logistics of the move, the packing, the selling, the getting rid of the stuff, the buying the new house, moving the kids, switching schools. But in our experience, that really isn't the hardest part. The hardest part is figuring out what the right move actually is for yourself and your family. So when you're standing at this crossroads, there are really only a few paths forward. We'll break these down. You can renovate and try to make your home work better for your life. You can move into something that fits your next chapter, or you can stay where you are and change your mindset. Just, if you know that it's going to be temporary and that you're going to move in 5 years, there are different modifications and refreshes you can do to your home to make it feel comfortable for you. You can stay where you are and be miserable, but we definitely don't recommend that option. So, getting clear on which one of those is right for you can feel hard, especially for those who like control. So,
Mm,
if your partner is looking at you right now, I feel you, I am you, I get it. But there, unfortunately, in real estate are so many variables you can't fully control: the market, interest rates, which we'll get into shortly, construction timelines, career changes, kids getting older. And that's why people often feel stuck in what we call the in between, the space where something about the house or life isn't quite working anymore, but you're not quite sure what the next step is. But the good news is, once that decision becomes clear, everything else tends to get much simpler. Once you know whether the right move for you is to renovate, stay, or move, we can help guide the rest of the process. And hopefully, you'll have some more clarity by the end of the webinar. And from there, we'll break down the next steps in the decision making process when it comes to actually making the move. So the order of operations when it comes to what do we do? Do we buy first and then sell, sell first and then buy, sell first and then rent? So we will get into that at the end of the webinar. But first, the goal is getting to clarity. We believe the best housing decisions happen when three things align: lifestyle, finances, and timing. Sometimes people focus just on the numbers, the interest rates, home values, what they can afford. And other times the decision is driven mostly by lifestyle, needing more space, wanting a different neighborhood, or preparing for a new stage of life. But the strongest real estate decisions usually happen when all three factors align: when the lifestyle shift makes sense, when the financial picture works, and when the timing is right for your family. So when those three things align, the decision usually becomes much clearer and much less stressful. And that's really the purpose of the framework we're walking through tonight, to help you look at your situation from all three angles so you can make a decision that feels thoughtful with confidence. This is one of the biggest patterns we see with homeowners. We sometimes call it the starter home dilemma. And it happens to really thoughtful families all the time. The first is emotional attachment. So I don't really struggle with this. It wasn't hard for me to say goodbye to our first homes, but Paul definitely felt it when it was time to sell our first house because, well, you gutted and remodeled it with your dad and spent many, like, so much blood, sweat, and tears over it. I think that was part of it, right, Paul?
Yeah. Yep. But it made sense for the family. So we had to move on and move up.
And that's one question that we get a lot from people who do have that emotional attachment to their first homes, is how can we keep it? So do you want to speak a little bit to that? Because that's a big one. Keeping the house, renting it out, it does sound like an ideal situation, but what does that look like in the Bay Area?
So we always tell everyone that are you planning to get in the business of being a landlord? Because renting your house and moving means that you're now a landlord. And are you making the conscious decision to do that, especially in an area where the laws of landlord and tenant are very strong in favor of tenants. So you have to learn to navigate that well, and you should be making that decision consciously. There's also, the wear and tear on your home. There's also tax implications and everything. So, really thinking those things through, whether it makes sense for you. That's where we can really play a role or tell you when it's time to talk to an attorney or tax professional to help out.
Awesome. Thank you. So the second thing we see is incremental upgrades, just the starting with one small project or one bigger project, maybe renovating the kitchen, but then heading to the bathrooms. And then it becomes, while we're at it, we need new windows. And before long, several projects stack up. And at that point, you can start to feel like you've invested so much into the house that you have to stay even if the house still isn't fully solving the lifestyle problem. So drop a comment if that's you in the chat. And the third pattern we see is a belief that just one more project will finally make the house work. And sometimes it does, but sometimes the challenge is bigger and the investment in making the house work doesn't make financial sense. Now that we're living in our forever home, we think about our investments in our home a completely different way. Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So when we think about a project, we think about it in terms of is this for me and my family, and are we going to love it? Like we did a pool project in our backyard.
Catch.
A lot of people would want to get rid of a pool in our area, and we may not get ROI on that or negative ROI, but we did it because we love it. Um, a lot of the time, another part of the trap is if you spend a lot of money on your house, the hope is that you can get at least like what the house was worth plus those upgrades. But because of the market fluctuations and cost of selling and everything,
Yeah.
sometimes that doesn't always work
He's quite.
out. So, the way that we like to think about it now is this for ROI, or is this, personal and something we need and we want? And then we start to talk about like, you know, is this going to have a big impact, or is this, where's the priority? Usually the priority now for us is like, what's going to bring the most enjoyment um, at the time, and also not put us through a giant remodel project because we've been through a lot of them. So we can also warn everybody how it feels to live in a cloud of dust. So.
Definitely. What we're going to do next is walk through this framework. So the series of questions that fall under these three main categories of timing, finances, and lifestyle that I keep speaking about. All right, so the first lens we're going to go into is timing. Is now the
Um,
right time to make a change? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Lisa and Jeff. They originally came to us because they were ready to move. They were expecting their second baby. Their first home in Oakland was beginning to feel tight, and we started looking for homes that could give them more space. But months into our search, something became clear. We were running out of time. The baby was getting closer to arriving, and the process of moving, just the whole idea of inspections, packing, adjusting to a new house, um, it started to feel like too much at that exact moment. So instead of forcing the move, Lisa and Jeff pivoted. We helped them think about how they could make their current home work for a little longer. They converted their garage into an ADU that became Jeff's office, which freed up his old office in the house so it could be used as a nursery for baby boy number two. And once the baby was older and life settled down again, they restarted their home search. That's when they made the move from Oakland to Alameda into a house that upgraded their lifestyle in a lot of ways. So the right move was moving, just not immediately. So, we talk about the market and the best time to buy and the best time to sell. It's also so much about it. And what we talk to a lot about with our clients is what's the best time for you to move? And then typically we'll try to avoid really like traditionally slow periods, holiday weeks, Thanksgiving, Christmas, between after December 15th to January 5th, we won't typically list a house. And then long weekends or big holiday weekends. But other than that, we really try to work with you to figure out what's best for your situation. Question for the chat. How long do you see yourself living in your current home? The reason this matters is because your time horizon influences your housing decisions and the finances. If a home is going to serve you for a longer chapter, investing improvements might make perfect sense. Like how I forced the kids to go in the pool every day in the summer to get that ROI. It will be there in about 10 to 15 years, I think. If the home is really just a stepping stone, though, those same investments may not be the smartest use of your time or money. So this step is asking, is this home supporting the next stage of your life, or are you starting to outgrow it? And the most common question we hear from homeowners right now and home
How's the
buyers.
market?
How's the market? Real estate decisions shouldn't be driven by headlines. They really should be driven by context. And real estate is extremely local. What's happening nationally isn't what's happening in Oakland, San Leandro, or Berkeley. Even within the East Bay, inner East Bay, different neighborhoods and price points behave differently. Even in Oakland, one pocket or neighborhood is going to be behave differently than another. So the question isn't how's the real estate market? The better question is what's happening in the specific segment of the market that affects your next move. That would be the market that you're living in right now, and then the one you want to move to. The second thing many homeowners don't realize is that move-up home buyers are often less sensitive to market shifts than they think. Because if the market softens slightly, you may sell your home for a little less, but the home you're buying is also likely slightly less. So the effect can sometimes cancel out. What matters more is the gap between the two homes. The
And
third point,
also
yeah.
the interest rate difference for a lot of folks because we are still in that locked in effect, from those hyper low interest rates. So that does affect a lot of folks. For some folks, it does make this move up move even probably not the best idea yet, in which case they might want to look into getting comfortable in the space or the improvements. But the interest rates are just to actually give a little bit of market update, the interest rates are getting better. We are dipping into the fives here and there, like low sixes, but but in the fives and kind of looking pretty solid and stable. The market actually picked up quite a bit too. In many of the neighborhoods, we're seeing, multiple offers, a lot of really strong quick closes and offer scenarios. So far, 2026 is shaping up to be pretty solid. And then quite a bit of turmoil out there in the world, obviously, we all know. But so far, we're chugging along okay. And unless, we take a really hard left or right turn soon, it seems to be a solid year for East Bay real estate market in general.
hmm Yeah, I think the locked-in effect is something really important to bring up for people who bought homes or who refinanced in the last 5 years or in the 2020 time frame. We have had a lot of hard conversations in the last few years with people who bought in 2021 to 2023, 2020 to 2022. where we looked at the net sheet and we looked at what their takeaway from the sale would be. And in some cases, they would actually be losing money by selling. So in that case, we work together to figure out, well, what's the priority here? Are you so miserable in your home that you need to leave? We can make that happen for you. Or can we help you figure out a way to make this work for a few more years as prices begin to appreciate again?
Mhm.
The second lens we look at with families is finances, which takes into consideration investment reality and opportunity costs. When people think about improving their home, the first question is usually, can we afford this project? But the more important question, excuse me, is actually, will this investment move our life forward? Or will it quietly delay the next chapter? Because some renovations definitely make sense. And other times, families end up investing a lot of money into a home that was really never designed to carry that level of investment. And over time, that can trap equity that might have been better used for their next move. So we recently worked with homeowners who understood something very clearly about their house. They knew there was a ceiling on what the home would sell for. This is the house after we made it beautiful, after they moved out, 2615 Truman in Oakland. But they avoided major renovations that wouldn't meaningfully change the value of the property. They lived like this for 10 years, had two kids, and then they sold. They were able to take that equity, move out of state into a home that fit their next chapter much better. But the key wasn't avoiding improving entirely, it was just understanding how much to invest and when to stop. Opportunity cost is another thing we look at. It's a slightly different question. It's about asking, what else could this money do for you? For example, if a homeowner is considering putting 250K into a renovation, that money doesn't just disappear. It also means it's no longer available for other options. It could have been part of a down payment on the next home. It could have been a way to move into a different school district or neighborhood, flexibility to really make the larger move later. So sometimes the most expensive cost isn't actually the renovation itself, it's the opportunity that you give up by tying that money to that particular house. And that's why we always encourage homeowners to evaluate decisions, not just based on what improves the home today, but also what options it might limit tomorrow. Paul, do you have anything to add there?
No, I think that's pretty well put in general. But when we think about finances, you know, are we, do you have good leverage or are you over leveraged? Do you, do you not use leverage wisely at all? By leverage, I mean, loans and your whole loan scenario. Are you like, when you're invested heavily in a home, the thing you got to remember is it's not liquid. Do you intend to sink cash into it and then get a home equity line to give yourself some more flexibility? Like, thinking about all of these things is a really good way to make sure that you're financially like flexible and nimble. You want to be able to navigate your finances in a way where you're the one in the driver's seat and you have different flexibility and stuff.
Thank you so much. That's well said. This is the good stuff. I'm going to go into a net sheet and hopefully it's not overwhelming. Just let me know if it is. But I know the first thing that you want to know when you're thinking about timing, investment reality, opportunity costs, and weighing those options, you really need to start thinking about what does the move look like financially until you understand those numbers, what your home might sell for, what it costs to sell, and what equity you'd actually walk away with. It's hard to evaluate all of the options clearly. So that's where something called a net sheet becomes really helpful. A net sheet is simply an estimate that shows what you might walk away with if you sold your home today. We start with an estimated sale price based on recent comparable homes in the neighborhood. And sometimes we give a range. Sometimes it's a very big range. We subtract the typical costs associated with selling, things like closing costs, mortgage payment, commissions, so you can see your approximate net proceeds. And this then helps answer one of the most important early questions is what would we actually have to work with? How much money will we take away if we decided to sell? Of course, disclaimer, this is just an estimate, and we always recommend confirming details with a tax professional, but it gives homeowners a very clear starting point for evaluating their options. Because once you understand your potential net proceeds, you can start comparing your decisions more clearly. You can ask questions like, does it make sense to invest more money into this home, or would that money be better used towards the next one? And having that
Um,
clarity tends to make the entire decision process a lot less emotional and a lot more strategic.
Yeah, I would go back to when we sold our first house. This is really, despite not wanting to let the house go, we had a really a good low interest rate at the time. Probably could have rented it and got positive cash flow, and I could have kept it and loved it. Although I'm really happy that there's new people in there who love the house now who own it. Um,
And that
but
still gives me my packages when I accidentally send my Old Navy
they do.
deliveries there.
Every once in a while I get to stop by. But this is also one of the super cool tax-free events of our lives. It's one of the most incredible things about American primary home ownership is that when you sell your primary home, you get $250,000 capital gains tax exemption for an individual and a $500,000 capital gains tax exemption for a married couple. There is a little bit of math involved in there, and there's definitely a CPA to check with on those things because, of course, we're not CPAs, but we can generally help you understand that and then suggest you get that verified. But having sold a couple properties, it's amazing when you finally don't have to pay taxes on something. So I want to put that out there. That's what got me over the line.
This is a another breakdown to make this a little more concrete and to talk more about numbers. Everyone wants to know what is the cost to sell. In this example, we're using a $1.1 million sale price, which is a fairly common median price in many East Bay neighborhoods right now. From that sales price, there are a few categories of costs that get subtracted before you arrive at your final net proceeds. The largest one is usually commissions, which are typically in the range of about 5 to 6% of the sale price, split between the listing broker and the buyer broker.
There's been like a lot on commissions, so we won't get into commissions too much because that's more of a one-on-one conversation. And they are always negotiable, and the law kind of changed around a lot, so we won't really get into commissions. We just want to show it as a cost here, though.
Mhm. There are transfer taxes, which are city and county taxes based on the sale price, unless you're in an unincorporated area. We also include a range, depending on the house, of property preparation costs, and this includes things like inspection, staging, listing preparation, because getting a home market ready is often part of achieving the best sale price. How do we know what improvements to make? And this is the property preparation phase. We do have another webinar that's specifically about selling your house, where we go a little bit more into the exact design decisions that we advise to get top dollar. I think it's called How to Get Top Dollar for Your Home. So that we can talk about for ages. But I wanted to just touch on the general process. So we usually will meet with you, we'll sign a listing agreement, and after the listing agreement is signed, we'll give you we'll do a property prep consultation and a checklist that really gives our recommendations for all of the upgrades that we think will add the most value to your home. Typically, our sellers spend between $20,000 and $50,000 on property prep, and our goal is to get you a 3-to-1 return on your investment. So if you're spending 50K, we want you to get 150K more when you sell the house. And some of these costs are very intimidating, especially if you haven't spent so much, if you've been really careful and conscientious about how much you're spending on your home to get that staging bid and have and see that you're going to spend $8,000 to rent furniture for a 6 week period is a lot. But it's something that we have seen time and time again gain give our sellers the best outcome. Paul, do you
Yeah.
want to say anything about that?
And yeah, and a lot of the time, we'll sign a listing agreement, because everybody's like, all right, we're selling, we got to start to get organized. So we meet after that listing appointment and we get all the paperwork done, after that. The the things that we typically look at and focus on are visual, right? Big surfaces, as I mentioned earlier. So property prep is a lot about curb appeal. It's a lot about landscape, paint, staging, floors, fixtures. Like it's all of these bigger surfaces. And then, we if we have other issues with the home, we deal with them. We're always we like to tell our sellers we're always honest and in their favor. So we look at everything, but we frame it, we provide bids on it. There's a lot of different ways we work on it, but property prep is really about creating a beautiful space for somebody to envision their life in. They see it online first, almost 95+% of the cases, probably 98% at this point, see it online. And then you don't want to use trickery online. So you want people to be able to see the home, get to the home, say, oh, all right, street, the house looks like it did on the internet, looks okay. Go on the front door, looks great. It feels welcoming and warm. And then at that point, starting to think, okay, like how do the numbers look? And so that's really the why of the property prep and some of the bigger concepts like behind it is creating that vision and that life for folks to, move into.
There are administrative costs through closing and escrow. And then finally, from there, we subtract the mortgage balance. Once you account for all of those, you're left with an estimated equity that's available to you. So in this example, it's 560K. And that number really becomes important when homeowners start comparing their options because it gives a clear sense of what resources you actually have available or you will have available to work with. So we're moving into the lifestyle piece. At some point in this process, the decision stops being purely about numbers. The numbers matter, but the best housing decisions, as I've been saying, usually happen when the numbers, the values, the timing align. So this slide is about stepping back and asking a few questions. For example, is your current commute working for your family, or would you rather have that time back around the dinner table? Would you rather have more square footage or be closer to the places you go every day? Park, school, coffee, friends. And then another one we see a lot, are you excited about taking on a major renovation? Or would you rather move into something that's ready to live in right away? None of these answers are right and wrong, but yeah, these are just different ways that the renovation that was supposed to fix everything actually makes life a little bit harder. So a family starts a project thinking they will solve their main frustrations that they're feeling in their home. Maybe it's adding space, reworking the layout, creating a home office. And this is the conversation we have a lot is people wanting more space, especially since the pandemic and especially since work from home has become more um, popular and everyone is working from home, it seems like these days, at least a few days a week. So these are questions that we talk about. Sometimes these projects make sense, and other times what we see happen is that the project becomes bigger than expected. So we have actually an Airbnb at our property, and we have had a lot of people come with kitchen renovations. They'll come and stay because they
These
want to
are,
stay in the neighborhood.
these are our case studies.
Yes. And they were like, how long do they think they're going to stay versus how long do they actually stay in the Airbnb when their kitchen is being remodeled. And most
We're
of the
like,
time
oh,
it's
they need another month for sure.
yeah, we're like, we'll be flexible. We'll see you for a while longer. We're going to become family by the end of this, because you're going to be living here for a while because everything just takes longer. Especially,
Part of the thing with costs in the Bay Area, especially on construction, it it always takes longer. It always costs more than you expect, and it is so difficult because of the dramatic variations between contractors, that one of the things we've actually never done is added square footage to a house
mm,
ourselves. We've always worked within the envelope of a home because it gives you a lot more flexibility, and um, it's these renovations and projects are can be tricky. They can be great and navigated really well, but they can also go the other direction too. So
it's important to be aligned with really understand what you want. If you're selling a home with a partner, being aligned together so that you're able to make this decision. Um, Also about home functionality, just I want you to take a minute to just think about your home and think if you could change one or two things that would make daily life easier or better, what would that be? You could drop it in the comments. For a lot of people, it's things like a bigger kitchen, a dedicated office space, a larger backyard, or some people downsizing. You want a smaller backyard. You don't want to take care of the of all of the the landscape. I love my garden now, but I dream of a day where I can downsize to a condo and then just have like a couple potted plants on my deck. So once you really identify what these things are that you're missing, the next question usually becomes, is it possible to fix this problem or this thing that I'm yearning for by changing the house? Or is it not? So just a quick gut check for yourself. Do you think the things you're wishing for are realistically solvable while staying in your current home? Maybe you're thinking, yes, maybe, probably not, not sure how much it would cost. And that uncertainty is really common because most homeowners focus on the problem first. But the better question is the solution reasonable for this house? Some improvements are simple and others start to require structural changes, additions, moving kitchens, bathrooms, major foundation work. And that at that point, it really becomes more of a question of are we solving a problem or are we turning this house into something that it was never designed to be? This is a question we get a lot, and Paul, I want to hear like a little bit about your take on and how you approach this conversation when people come and say, I want more space in my house. Should I add the ADU? Should I add the primary suite and do the addition, build up?
I mean, I want to say no right away because it usually is, it does not pencil the vast majority of the time. And a lot of folks who haven't done it before, it's it's hard. Remodels, additions, getting them right, thinking through everything, is difficult, and you're gonna see every little tiny imperfection or decision that you wish you'd made that you didn't make and everything. It can be very worth it, but you have to just make sure that you're okay with knowing that maybe you are going to spend a little bit um, too much, and you might not really have the equity from that. Are you going to be okay with that financially? Because if you're doing it because you love the home and you love the space and you want to be there, then that's the right reason.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to that question of how long do you imagine staying in the home? If you are going to add the addition, spend three to $500,000, which is usually what it costs in the Bay Area, you want to be there for 10 to 15 years. You want to really make sure that you're not hoping to turn around and get that investment back, basically. Here's a good example of how home functionality can shape the decision of staying or moving. We had clients in San Leandro who were planning for multi-generational living because grandma was going to move in with them. The first thought was to remodel their existing home to create some type of in-law space, some type of studio in the lower level. But when our sellers looked at it more closely and what the project would involve, the construction, the cost, the timeline, it was going to be just a major renovation. And even after doing all that work, there were still parts of the house and the location that the homeowners didn't love. So we zoomed out and asked a different question. What kind of home would actually support your next stage of life? They had three very active kids, and grandma also needed her own space and independence. So instead of forcing their current house to work, they shifted their search to single family homes with ADUs. They ended up moving to a property that was already designed for the lifestyle they were moving into, with a detached ADU and enough space for everyone to live comfortably. And in their case, moving was actually faster and simpler than trying to retrofit their additional home and probably more cost effective. The question that you should ask is there it's kind of a push and pull of like, should we renovate or is there a home that already fits the life we're moving into? And then the last step, exit clarity. If you do decide to move, ask yourself, does this next home support the life you're growing into and not just the life you have today? Financially, we'll also think about things like, will this decision build equity and create options for you later, or will it limit your flexibility down the road? So, the best housing decisions usually do both, solving today's problems and also setting us up for what's next. I said I'd talk a little bit about like you've made this decision now, you know you want to move. How do you get there? And I'm kind of going
That's
fast
my
because
favorite.
so once you've made the decision to move, the question is now, how do you structure the move? And that's where we come in. And there are a few common ways people structure this transition. Each one has its trade-off. I'll speak to each one just very briefly. The first option is buying the next home before selling your current one. This can make the move feel much smoother because you move once directly into the new home. The trade-off is that it requires a little more financial flexibility while you briefly carry the costs of two homes. It's often the easiest transition plan for families with young kids. This is what we did both times we moved. The second option is selling first and then buying, which reduces financial risk because once your home sells, you know exactly how much equity you have and what you can comfortably afford. Until your home sells, it's just ranges and estimates, right? So you might be able to afford a lot more house than you think. The trade-off here is that it usually requires a temporary move while you look for your next home. And um, yeah, it's a tough one, right? The temporary move, especially when you have young kids or a lot of stuff to think about moving all of that and all of the beings.
This is largely because to achieve the best purchase price in the Bay Area, agents and buyers expect a house to be vacant and easy to show in our area. It's just the overwhelming preference. Um, in other more normal markets, you could live in a house and somebody could come and visit that house and uh, make an offer, and they can do that here too. But it can really be a drastic difference in sale price.
Right. There's the option to sell your house while living in it, which we talk a lot about in our more individual consultations. And if it
Yeah.
makes sense for your specific situation, we will support it. And if your goal is to make as much money possible, then that's not going to be your best option. So it's a tough conversation to have. I know it's tough to have to think about moving out of your house before it's and making those plans before you've actually sold it. But in most cases, that's what's going to net you the most money at the end of the day. The third option is selling renting a house and then selling the house. So this can give breathing room between two big decisions rather than going from being a homeowner to being a homeowner. Going from being a homeowner to being a renter, it actually sounds kind of nice sometimes when I think about that. It can give breathing room between two big decisions and the flexibility to wait for the right home. It can also be a great option if you're moving to a new neighborhood, city, state, and you want to make sure you really like it before you commit. Occasionally, the fourth option, homeowners decide to rent out their current home and move on to the next one. And this is we touched a little bit about this. If you're ready to be a landlord, if that's in the cards for you and it makes financial sense, that could be a great option for you. And part of our job is really helping families think through these options and choosing the sequence that will create alignment with their priorities. And usually the priorities is a combination of minimizing stress and maximizing profit. That's what we usually are helping people do. Let us know which of these options you're leaning to now in the comments. And that was actually our last slide. This is our last slide. We wanted to pause right now. I know we only have 2 more minutes of the presentation, but love to have a moment of reflection. And please feel free to let us know how you're feeling now, or write in the comments, going back to our poll from the beginning. Do you feel a little clearer right now about your next housing decision? If you were a one before, are you a two now? Um, what what is what are you thinking about?